Hi, and welcome to this lunch stream. It's the 8th of May, a Friday, and I have some articles and some other things that I want to react to today. So I thought I'd just jump on instead of eating today. I'll just make a quick stream and let's see where we end up. I wanted to begin with this because I saw a Twitter, an X post from Sam Altman, where he says, I keep thinking I want the models to be cheaper, faster, more than I want them to be smarter. But it seems that just being smarter is still the most important thing. And I mean, this is a massive thing for Sam Altman to say. Like, he's essentially backpedaling from this hysterical hunt for larger models to solve everything. Like a God model is not what he's talking about here. And at the same time, he's implying that maybe this technology isn't going to lead up to AGI. And I think that's so interesting because he's made his entire company and career partly on the sort of assumption that if we just build bigger and smarter models, that the economy is going to sort of fix itself. What he's saying here is that no, I want the models to be cheaper and faster, but people don't want that. Investors don't want that. And I there hasn't been a lot of reactions to this from what I've seen. If I was an investor in OpenAI, I would seriously question whether they're actually on the right track to do stuff that they have said that they're going to do. And then he gets a response from Gherkin Senis. What about smarter, cheaper, and faster? And Sam says that, well, I mean, I would also like that. If you can make it happen, I'll sign up. Like, we have signed up to you, Sam. Sam. This is what you promised. You promised smarter, cheaper, and faster. It was going to be 10 times better and 10 times cheaper in 6 months. And it's been 6 months, and it's been 6 months again. And I just find it fascinating that this is where the OpenAI and probably the other labs are going to have to reckon with the fact that they're not getting much more value out of just making it bigger, or if they're getting more value, it's at a cost that isn't sustainable for them. And I think this is a sort of preamble to what's going to come in the coming months when it comes to the largeness versus the cost effectiveness and the fastness, the cheapness of these models. Looking forward to see what happens in this space. AI agents as users. AI agents now interact with digital interfaces alongside humans. Designing for both requires rethinking what user means and prioritizing accessibility. I'm not sure. I'm still very scared about letting an agent interact with my finances and making decisions for me online. I wouldn't let an agent get access to my emails, for example. So for me, the use case for having agents interact with digital interfaces is kind of a weird thing. Do you need an interface? Couldn't you just open up an API and have the agent sort of interact through code? Well, why does it need an interface? But let's see what they have to say. The design community has spent decades refining what it means to design for users. We study their behavior, map their journeys, test our assumptions against their needs. Our discipline is and should be oriented around understanding who is using the product or service and designing accordingly. AI agents, systems that pursue a goal by iteratively taking actions, evaluating progress, and deciding on its own steps, are now interacting with the same digital interfaces we design for people. They navigate websites, fill out forms, compare options, execute transactions. They do this crudely, often unreliably, and with significant limitations. In functional terms, they are users of our interfaces, even if we haven't recognized them as such. Okay, yeah, but still, it's so risky. Should we recognize them if they don't do it reliably? Maybe we should start having like disclaimers on all of our websites where it says like, if you're using this as an agent, or if you're letting an agent use this website, you are putting yourself in harm's way, and you should be aware of that. We take no responsibility. For me, that seems like a much more, right now, feasible way to tackle this problem, rather than designing the interface to facilitate the robots. I'm unsure that I see the value of that. There's a conceptual shift required to account for this reality. A core assumption needs updating. User is no longer synonymous with human. I don't agree. I think users are humans. Humans can use an algorithm or a statistical model to achieve things, but in the end, aren't we serving the users that are connected to that agent? I'm not sure that I agree with this article so far. For most of the history of digital design, the word user has implicitly meant human beings sitting in front of a screen. Most design heuristics, usability principles, and research methods assume a human on the other end. People are having agents attempt a nearly infinite variety of tasks, combining calendars and adding new events, booking flights, checking if a prescription has been refilled, finding the best reviewed product under a certain price. The agent interacts with digital interfaces to find information, understand available actions, and execute them, just as a human would. While it may feel antithetical to the philosophy of user experience, this reality means the agent is a user in every functional sense. Or are we just anthropomorphizing here? The digital system, if we wanted to book a flight, we should probably see the user still being the person prompting, and the digital agent, as it were, as a part of the digital chain. I think another word would be better. I don't think necessarily it would be beneficial for anyone to shift the word user to also include agents. But let's see what they have to say. It has a goal. It encounters an interface. It attempts to accomplish the goal through that interface, and the interface either supports that attempt or it doesn't. Well, yes, but is that the best way? Like, do we want digital agents to go through the interface? Couldn't it just look through a database of relevant things and send, I don't know, SQL commands? I'm not sure. Is having a digital interface, clicking a button, desirable? It seems a bit dubious to me. The distinction matters because the interfaces we design today are already failing this new type of user, and those agents are in turn failing the human being on the other side of the screen, which is kind of fine, because the users of those agents, and I want to use the term user for the human, the users of the agent are sort of first in line. They are the early adopters of this technology. I understand how I would use an agent to do things online, but I don't want to, because I don't trust the technology, and I'm not willing to put my finances and my information, well, as protected as that can be, but I'm not willing to put that out there in that way. I don't think that's a good idea. I really don't think that's a good idea. So, yeah. Early adopters always, as it says, early, and they are most of the time willing to try things out, even if it breaks. And that should ideally lead to the agents becoming better at solving tasks, or us users and people trying to serve us coming up with ways to use agents that doesn't break. I'm not necessarily sure that it's feasible to just change the internet to also facilitate agents. The agents probably have to get better in order for that to be a sort of feasible thing to do. There are three primary approaches agents use to interact with digital interfaces. This is actually interesting to me because I want to know what other ways there are than the one they stated earlier, which is just clicking a button on the screen. And each one reveals a different set of design assumptions that break down. Vision-based interaction. The most rudimentary approach mirrors what humans do. The agent takes a screenshot of the interface and uses a vision model to interpret what it sees. The agent looks at the page, identifies elements, button, text fields, navigation items, and decides what to click and repeats. And this seems like a very fragile way to do it. I'm sure this is absolutely the worst way to try to achieve things online. Using a robot to click buttons seems really bad. This approach is expensive. It's slow, computationally wasteful, error-prone, and token-intensive. A single screenshot requires tens of thousands of tokens for the model to process and doesn't account for dynamic content or multi-step workflows. And that's fair. Like, if you, for example, want to highlight a button that it's, okay, so here's an action that you can take, and we know that because we move the mouse to highlight the button, that would be at least 2 screenshots for the AI to understand that. And that's not good if it costs a lot of money. Say that it costs a couple of dollars per image, then that's not really an economical way to click a button, is it? Accessibility tree parsing. Rather than screenshotting the page, agents can also read the browser's accessibility tree, the structured representation of the page that browsers generate from HTML. This is the same data structure that screen readers use to make interfaces navigable for people with visual impairments. The accessibility tree provides a clean hierarchical representation of page elements, the roles, labels, states, and relationships. It costs a few thousand tokens to process, a fraction of what screenshots require, and provides more reliable information. That makes sense. That actually seems like a much better way. And as annoying as a screen reader interface is for someone with good vision, it's really useful with someone with impaired vision, but I can also see that, yeah, it's really easy and structured to go through that. And given the amount of time that companies have spent on sort of making accessibility better the last couple of years, just because of legislation and things, this is likely a much better way to do it. Interfaces that are well built for accessibility are already more legible to agents. Semantic HTML, properly labeled elements, clear roles, and logical page hierarchy also serves the agent user. And then we have what I probably spoke about earlier, direct API access. The third approach bypasses the interface entirely with agent-to-agent interactions and agent-to-API interactions. While structured APIs are available, agents can query data and execute actions directly without having to interact with any visual or structural representation of a page. Emerging standards like the Model Context Protocol are making the approach more standardized, but not necessarily more widespread. Okay, I mean, this is interesting just because I don't think necessarily we want to use agents anyhow, the way that agents are today, which is basically just an LLM with a more or less thin wrapper around it. Because it's a statistical thing, given enough users, it will break horribly a number of times. Maybe not a lot of the times, but if you have a significant user base enough, it's going to be catastrophic enough in enough times that it's going to be really, really bad. So I still think that we need to sort of figure out something that is better than just an LLM with a wrapper. And I'm assuming also that the quality of agents can be very different and that you can use a lot of other technologies to sort of rein it in and maybe even initiate an action through an LLM by writing in text, but then if it's specialized enough, you could have just an algorithm that is more suitable for the task and just book a flight through a decision tree or something. Consider a mundane example. A parent asks their agent to check the school website for upcoming events, cross-reference those dates against the family's shared calendar, and flag any conflicts. A human would scan the events page, note the dates, and check the calendar. The agent's experience is different. The school website was designed for a parent to scan visually. Events are listed with dates, times, and descriptions arranged through spatial grouping. A human may not struggle to read this, but for an agent parsing a screenshot, every piece of information must be inferred from pixel clusters. Which text is a date, which is a title, and how do they relate? The event page may load dynamically, capturing an incomplete page. Some events live on the website, others are downloadable PDFs, others behind parent portal logins. Every step increases the likelihood of error, as well as token use. Completing something this ordinary and mundane becomes a large task, let alone agents completing more complex tasks, making changes to a profile, ordering an item, or checking availability and booking. Yeah, and that's a good point. If you have something that is low complexity and low stakes, which is checking a calendar to see how it fits into your time, and the worst thing that can happen is you miss a recital or something, that can be bad enough, but it's not financially crippling. It's not gonna affect your health, for example. But yeah, then low stakes and low complexity, maybe we're coming to a point where I can dare try to use it like that. Near term, designing for both. In the immediate term, the design question is, how do we build interfaces that serve both human users and agent users simultaneously? This is context dependent and assumes the delegation of tasks by your users that they align with your products or services ethos. Okay, so we basically, if we want agents to be able to take over, then we should do this. Otherwise, we shouldn't. Accessibility guidelines achieve this design goal. Clear descriptive elements, names, predictable interaction patterns, logical page hierarchy, semantic HTML, ARIA standards. These are accessibility fundamentals that the design community has understood, albeit often deprioritized for years. Investing in accessibility has been the right thing to do, but now there's a clear business case for it. And it's how agents will use products and services in the near term. Organizations that have been rigorous about accessibility have, perhaps without realizing it, been building interfaces that agents can already navigate more effectively. This is a great argument if you're a UX designer or developer and you want to spend some money and time on building more accessible web pages and systems. I mean, this will probably, now is the time to do that. If you have something like this and you want to make sure that your management team is on this article is not bad as an argument for doing that. Clear descriptive labeling. Avoid icon-only buttons, ambiguous text link texts like click here, and labels that are dependent on visual context. Predictable, consistent patterns. Consistent navigation structures, standard form patterns, and predictable state changes reduce the likelihood of agent errors compounding across multi-step workflows. Minimal reliance on visual-only information architecture. Structural markup must reflect the visual grouping in order for agents to understand relationships. None of these recommendations are new. They're the same principles that make interfaces more usable for humans with disabilities, more robust across devices and contexts, and more maintainable over time. What if you don't want agents in your product? This is interesting because you don't always want that. I can see also if it's about democracy, for example, you want participation from the public, you need to actively work against that. There are certainly business models and product categories where having an agent in your product may be undesirable. I mean, ads. If you want people to look at ads, you don't care about agents looking at ads. You want people to do that. And in that case, you have to work against agents accessing something that has an ad. If you have information on your page that is useful for someone, you want that person to come to your page. And that's Yeah, I mean, it's a big problem, obviously, right now, but from this perspective, it's an interesting thought. The argument for designing with agents is in mind assumes that your user's goal and your business goals stay aligned when a machine acts on the user's behalf. That's not always true. When the visit is the product, some businesses depend on humans actually visiting the product. For example, for these companies, an agent that extracts the value without the visit is an existential problem. Ad-supported content and content marketing sites have already begun to see the impacts of this shift in their metrics. Yeah, it's a big problem. The internet, as we know it, is kind of at risk here. Streaming services have a version of this problem too. Netflix wants you to browse. Browse time surfaces original content and deepens the engagement loop that drives the retention. An agent that answers, "What should I watch tonight?" without the user ever opening the app undermines the discovery experience Netflix has been optimizing for years. When friction is intentional, not all friction in an interface is a design failure. In some domains, the friction exists for regulatory, legal, or safety reasons, and removing it creates liability. Financial services are full of examples. A brokerage that makes it easy for an agent to execute trades without safety checkpoints and legal disclosures open itself for regulatory risk. The friction is necessary. Healthcare products will face similar challenges. HIPAA, healthcare is a good example. Finance and healthcare and law are all places where you don't want people to not understand. You could argue that people are already sort of skimming through EULAs and just clicking buttons to achieve a goal that they have, but this probably opens up a whole new sort of vector of liability for these companies. Some interfaces are deliberately opaque to machines because the data behind them is competitively sensitive. Airlines, hotels, and rental car companies have spent years fighting the screen scraping bots. Their pricing is dynamic, proprietary, and strategically managed. Real-time access to that data is exactly what competitors and price comparison aggregators want. Making interfaces agent-friendly would undo all of that. Yeah, so you don't want that. When you want your product to be the agent, there are plenty of platforms that want to be the agent layer themselves. Some products are actively restricting third-party agent access, blocking external MCP calls, limiting API surface area, because they see their own AI capability as a... I need to cut that, so that's a good place to take a note. Because they see their own AI capabilities as a differentiator. If your product's value proposition is becoming the intelligent layer on top of your user's data, letting an external agent treat your platform as a dumb data store commoditizes the thing you're building towards. This is going to be a big problem if you have that as your sort of US unique selling point. And agents are either going to be very expensive so that no one is using them, or they're going to be very cheap. And then how do you protect a business model like this? That's a different story. The competitive risk of opting out. None of this means that the decision of blocking agents is risk-free. The harder question is what happens when a competitor does not block them. If you work for a bank, you might make the reasonable choice to prevent agents from executing transactions on behalf of your customers for security reasons. But what happens when a competitor offers similar financial products to start advertising that they support agentic wealth managers? This is a strategic calculus, not a universal imperative. Designing for agents isn't always the right call, but opting out entirely carries its own risk. Whether you optimize for agents or not, we all need to, at minimum, recognize that agents will attempt to use your products. I think that's fair. I think that's something that I sometimes maybe I'm looking to ignore that because I want people to visit my sites, but likely if things continue as they are, that's not always going to be the case. Longer term, when the interface layer diverges, when agents can query structured data and execute visions actions, the visual interface will become irrelevant to them. As more organizations expose their services through agent-compatible APIs, the design problem for human users and agent users will increasingly separate. Despite this, humans will still need interfaces, visual, interactive, designed for comprehension and decision making. I think this is the more interesting discussion to have right now. A lot of people are talking about agents doing stuff and the need for a visual interface to go away. I think that's really unlikely. It's very, very fast to do things visually. It actually takes very little time and you have a lot of control over the decisions that you make. And I think in all likelihood, the value of having control over certain things is just going to go up. So I do not think agents will be the prevalent sort of way of executing on things online. I think human interfaces will be very important. Maybe in collaboration with some decision-making tools like decision support or something. But then you have other things where, yeah, I want to check this date and cross-reference it against my calendar. Then maybe. Agents will interact with the underlying data and logic directly. The experience of a human has will depend on the agent's ability to complete a task. So, conclusion. The word user was always a shorthand. It described the entire entity trying to accomplish a goal through the thing we designed. For decades, that entity was exclusively human, which is no longer the case. I'm not sure. I don't think we will move over to referring to agents as users. They are still part of the system that is trying to achieve something for a user, and I don't think that will change. I think this is the wrong read. But yeah. Recognizing agents as users requires expanding an assumption that has been implicit in our work since the field began. What changes with this shift is the scope of who we're designing for, and the urgency of practices we already know matter. Semantic structure, accessibility, clear labeling, and predictable interaction patterns. To me, that seems like a different discipline almost. I'm not sure that a screen reader friendly interface is very efficient if you compare it to like direct API access. So I think this article was too long. I think there are some interesting parts in this. For example, humans are users, agents are part of a system trying to do something for a user. I think that's important, and I think we shouldn't sort of confuse those two. An agent isn't a user. An agent is accessing a web page, hopefully in order to do something efficiently and well for a human. And we should design for that rather than optimizing for agents to be equal to humans. And the other thing is, I don't think maybe designers necessarily need to design for agents. I don't think that's where design is going. I think designers can keep doing design for humans and then let technologists, technical experts do the designing for a system that will take it further. But then on the other side of that, you probably want to interact with the agent through some sort of interface anyhow. I don't think clear text or just voice is necessarily always the best way to do that. So maybe web pages will sort of give you small packets of interface. So the agent goes and fetches a piece of interface and it presents it to the user in a good way. That could be one way, but we don't know. It's all speculative right now, but it's interesting. Too long of a text. They could have just made this much, much shorter. I'll probably cut this down before bringing it online, but yeah, interesting. Next up, I just want to check that the camera isn't sort of blocking the view of the text. Is the text too small? But then I am blocking the text. I think it just needs to be good enough. Yeah, that's good enough. That is good enough. Okay. The term AGI is almost useless at this point. I think it is. And I think that sort of harkens back to Sam Altman's tweet. I keep thinking we want the model to be cheaper, faster, more than I want them to be smarter. If Sam Altman is taking that stance, I think AGI based on LLMs is kind of dead. But yeah, we'll see. People often treat the term artificial general intelligence, AGI, as if it meant a single clear thing. But when pressed for a clear definition, their answer, though they may appear superficially similar, tend to differ a lot in the details. Is AGI about matching human performance or exceeding it? Is it about all tasks or just cognitive tasks? And in either case, about most or all of those tasks? Is the important part that AI can perform economically viable work, or that it can learn new things as efficiently as humans? Yeah. If it's learn new things as efficiently as humans, I think they're kind of fucked. They can't do that right now. I think this is also the problem with replacing junior and mid engineers with LLMs is it doesn't learn. You're stuck with an intern that something with the capability of an intern that doesn't improve. It doesn't learn from everything it's done the last 16 months at your company to do things a little bit better or understand that, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that. It just tries again. And it does with the same level of expertise of the domain that they're in and the same level of expertise of the system and the company that they're in. And I think that is a big problem. But back to the article, it used to seem possible that in practice the differences between these definitions might not matter all that much. If AI capabilities progressed smoothly, say from mouse to chimp to human level, or from preschooler to high schooler to PhD graduate, then all of the above definitions might be fulfilled at roughly the same time. These days, though, it's clear that AI capabilities are highly jagged. This makes it likely that there could be big gaps between when different definitions of AGI are fulfilled. The jagged frontier is just basically that an AI can be very good at something but really bad at something else, and it's not always obvious why it's good at one thing or another thing. This is an article that we can come back to and read later if someone wants. Let's just remove that. To put it another way, many people seem to treat AGI as know it when you see it kind of thing. But we simultaneously have serious people claiming that AGI has been achieved. Yeah, which is weird because to me, AGI needs to be better than what we have. And others saying it's still a decade or more away. Expecting that we'll know it when we see it is patently not working. Yeah, no, it doesn't really seem so. This is interesting. I think it is AGI, seriously. Try asking it a lot of questions and then ask yourself, how much smarter was I expecting AGI to be? And this is the problem, right? It can feel very smart, but it's also very confident, right? If you ask it something, it will give you a very confident answer. And if I'm not an expert in a domain, then I might think that that is really great. Personally, when I ask it to do things that are in sort of the design space or the strategic space, it doesn't perform that well. It doesn't really work for my own domain, but it feels like it's really good at coding, for example. But then if I ask my brother that does a lot of coding, it says that, no, it's not really good at coding, but it can write really well or whatever it is. It can probably be a doctor, and then you go to the doctor and it says like, no, this isn't good enough. So I don't want to just hate on the idea of AGI here. it had a good run and it was more useful in the past. The problem is that AGI is a fuzzy cloud of a concept. It's not one specific point in a concept space, but a spread of many related points. That's a good argument. I mean, it being a good, useful thing in the past makes sense, because if you have a very fuzzy concept, but all of the fuzziness is very far away, then of course it makes more sense. But then when you approach the limit of that and you're getting to a space where, yeah, okay, so this is a thing that I think AGI will be, and this is a thing that I think AGI will achieve. I mean, we're fairly far away from an LLM being able to control a humanoid robot thing and that working, but it can write a poem that feels interesting, or somewhat interesting. Fuzzy clouds from a distance versus close up. Okay, so they're probably getting to that. It's not inherently bad for a concept to be fuzzy. Many useful concepts are love, life, justice, freedom. As long as invoking the concept let you gesture in a direction that your listeners understands, fuzziness doesn't have a big problem. For a long time, this was the situation with AGI. We were far enough away from the fuzzy cloud that the specifics didn't really matter. Back then, the term was coined in the early 2000s. The point of talking about artificial general intelligence was to contrast that with narrow AI systems that existed at the time. Narrow AI refers to models that can each do one specific thing, like recognizing zip codes, detecting credit card frauds, or filtering spam. Back when the AI that we could build in reality was far away from any definition of AGI, it was helpful to be able to gesture in the direction of much more capable general purpose systems that we might one day develop. That's really interesting. I like a chess computer, you wouldn't say that that is AGI, but it's really fucking good at chess. It's really, really good at chess. So this makes sense. And again, like if it's far away, you can point in the direction and you can say, okay, yeah, AGI is cool. And then you come to and look at the individual points and it's not as clear anymore. But that changed. Today, the best AI systems are good enough that they are now inside the fuzzy concept cloud of AGI-ishness. That is, they have surpassed some people's definition of AGI while failing well short of others. As a result, talking about AGI is no longer a helpful way to gesture in a rough direction. Instead, it's likely to make some people think you mean one thing and others imagine something totally different. Yeah, so it just brings confusion. I love this graph. This graph is really cool. Really nice. Okay. If you ask me, AGI stopped being useful as a term as early as 2022. The original ChatGPT released that November was not human level in most ways, but it was clearly general in some meaningful way that has not been true of AI systems before, the advent of large language models. Rather than ditch AGI in 2022, though, instead we just coined a new term, general purpose artificial intelligence, which is obviously a totally different thing from artificial general intelligence. Sure, but it's still confusing. In 2026, it's time to move on. We have AGI alternatives. In my experience, there are two big use cases for a term like AGI. Predicting a face change. Sure, things are a certain way now, but once we have AGI, things will be a whole lot like another way. Predicting we are not close to the ceiling of AI progress. AI has gotten a lot better over the past years, but there's still a long way to go. Right. And I guess a marketing campaign from a AI lab is somewhere in between. We will have a new reality, and it's not that far, but it is far away, and it will be so much better that we should spend a lot of money building it. If you want to talk about face change, I think the best approach is to be specific as you can about the milestone you think will trigger the face change and why. Here's some opinions. Fully automated AI R&D, which could lead to an intelligence explosion. AI that is as adaptable as humans, which could lead to a massive, irrecoverable job loss. Self-sufficient AI, which would no longer need humans for energy, chips, or anything else, and could therefore dispense with them. AI becoming conscious or otherwise worthy of moral status, which should radically change how we interact with AI. If you want to talk about, these are all like really weird. And I don't think we are near any of these. But it makes sense that these are the new fuzzies that we can point towards, like fully automated AI R&D. I guess fully implies that it's done, but there are probably things where AI can do a lot of the R&D on itself, but maybe not all of it. But obviously, I think we can all agree that we're fairly far away from it becoming self-sufficient or conscious. That seems likely to me. If you want to talk about a high ceiling one, good option is just to describe that AI that's far more capable than what we have today. If you want a single term, the simplest option is superintelligence, which roughly means AI that is far smarter than humans in most or all ways. Like AGI, superintelligence is a fuzzy cloud of a concept, but it's still far enough away from what the AI that we have today that it can be helpful as a direction to gesture in, just like AGI was 20 years ago. Then we have a quote. Bloodless phrases like cognitive tasks and virtually all makes people's eye glaze over, and it's very easy for different people to interpret them as massively in different ways. So for people who think the world is going to be radically transformed by AI, I think it's helpful to talk less about either AGI or superintelligence and instead describe vivid concrete milestones that you think will happen soon due to increasing capability. The classic of the genre is all humans are dead, but other options include things like civilization's energy output is 10xing every year, or near light speed space probes are on their way to other stars. While I love being pedantic about terminology, I didn't write this post just to gripe. The gaps between different concepts of what AGI even means are starting to damage our ability to think together about how to navigate the transition into a world with extremely advanced AI. A word that lets three people think they're talking about the same thing when one of them means 03 with tool use, another means AI that could run civilization autonomously without humans, and the third means an AI that works exactly like a human brain, consciousness and all, is an actively anti-helpful word. I'm not expecting AGI to vanish from common usage overnight. For one thing, vagueness isn't always a problem. For a term like AGI pilled, it's more a feature than a bug. I think this is a really interesting point. Like, it is very useful for someone that wants to hype up the current systems to be able to talk about AGI, because it's so fuzzy. You don't have to be concrete. You can't be concrete. And then you can just sell the concept of let's buy this together as a society, and then we'll see where we kind of end up. And things like it's better that we do it than them because it's going to be so powerful that we can't risk that. But I think it's very likely that 10 years from now, talking about when we will build AGI or what will happen when we reach AGI will feel outdated and misguided, because it will be clear that AGI was always a fuzzy cloud, not a specific milestone. I hope this post can help us reach that conclusion sooner. So I think this was a really good text from Helen Toner. I really like this. Who is Helen Toner? AI National Security in China, part of the founding team at Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technologies. No, it's not in China. Or is it China? I'm confused. Doesn't matter. This was good. I like it. And we will keep an eye out for more articles from Helen. I think words do matter. And it's important that we think through how we talk about AI and other things. AGI is kind of a useless word unless you're trying to sell something that is very hard to achieve, like Sammy Boy and his people. Okay, how product is changing in 2026. What product managers should double down on, drop, and learn in 2026 based on actual data. And then there's first a lot of commercials from Aunt Murphy. Fear. I could have opened this post with product management is dead, or if you're not an AI PM in 2026, you'll be left behind. Fear. But whilst those take gets attention, they're rarely grounded in fact. And I don't need to tell you this, as an amazing product people you are, you know well that we should always seek truth over nice sounding narratives. This is why I spent several days doing my own research, going through different reports and looking at data to understand what actually is happening in product. This is something I do every year as a part of revisiting my strategy. Last week I decided to walk through it all live in this live stream. I'm not going to cover everything from the stream here, instead I'll focus on the key takeaways. Specifically, the 4 big trends reshaping product right now, the top skills for product managers in 2026, and what you should double down on. Okay? This is very interesting. I think we'll have a look at it. 4 big trends reshaping product in 2026. Job market rebound. If you feel like the market has crashed, you aren't entirely wrong, but zooming out tells a different story. I think this is true. I kind of feel it. It's not concrete. I don't have any data, so I'm really excited to see what Ant is going to bring up here, but I kind of feel a shift where the job market is sort of, companies have now gotten rid of so many people, and they're also stressing a little bit about all the competency that they need to build up in order to get like new product managers or new designers or new developers. So yeah, lockdowns and COVID drove a tech bubble, which eventually popped in 2024. It's easy to spin a story that recent layoffs are driven by AI. Yeah, this is something that I've talked extensively about before, that I don't think this is about AI. We had a lot of developers after COVID, and we had a lot of designers after COVID. And I think very few, maybe layoffs were triggered by AI, but the replacement of them hasn't happened by AI. It's been happening by people scrapping projects or essentially using the same product manager for more projects, and hopefully it works out. But I think we're going to see a correction of the correction. So we had a boom. If you zoom out, you'll see that we had a boom followed by a sharp correction. Yeah, I mean, if you follow the line, it's definitely. I want to go and check this stream out. This seems really cool. But we'll go through the high level stuff, and then I think if you're more interested, go and check out product pathways, which means if you want to remove that bubble, the chart would look more linear. Yeah, exactly. If you ignore this part, it just goes. Then we're starting to correct again. Today, there's approximately 42,000 open product manager roles on LinkedIn, double that what was reported this time last year, indicating that the market is well into recovery and more aligned with what we saw pre-2020. There are also more people in product today than pre-2020. Roughly 2.5 million people have the title product manager on LinkedIn. That's crazy. That was not the case a couple of years ago. I hope most of them are building useful product. I'm not sure, but I hope so. So whilst we feel the aftershocks of the bubble bursting, the market is actually in good shape and product management is far from dead. In fact, it is growing. And I feel like this is also true for designers and developers. Yeah. AI PM roles. Of course, if we're talking about roles, we have to talk about AI product management. Currently, AI PM roles account for approximately 8 to 10% of all open product management roles, with nearly half of those positions based in the US. It's important to note that this count represents new jobs, not the total number of roles in the market. I think it's early days to draw any firm conclusion on this specific role, but as you will see in the data later on, 96% of PMs, regardless of their title, use AI on a frequent basis. So title aside, using AI to build products is definitely becoming the norm. I know it has been for me. After all, I was helped by AI to pull this data. Yeah, and I think one of the big struggles for product managers and everyone is going to be how to use AI without losing control of what you're doing. And the example that I like to bring up is if you're doing market research or you want to do product discovery and you're talking to people and you're interviewing them, I think one of the worst things that you can do is to talk to the person that you're talking to fairly casually, because it becomes like that if you're not taking notes, and you just use the transcript function of Zoom or Teams in order to get notes from the conversation, and then you take those notes and you put them into a Miro board or some other space, and you have an AI do analysis of that. I find that when I do that, I lose so much control. I'd much rather wait if I can get a high level, a very, very high level understanding of what the problems are for the users, for the people, interacting a lot more with people. And then I do the first run of an analysis. I do my clustering, I do my writing as I used to do. And after that, I input my analysis into the AI. Sometimes I've found that if I also give it some context, like parts of transcripts that I choose as being relevant, it becomes good. You could argue that I'm missing things here, that I'm not letting the AI get all the information. But I find if I do that, it becomes very confused. And if I don't take notes in my meetings, I lose a lot of control and understanding of the subject that I'm trying to figure out. So that's one example of an AI skill that I think PMs and others, designers, developers, everyone needs to figure out is, at what point do I let go of control over the thing that I'm trying to do in order not to lower the quality of the work that I'm doing? Because obviously things are faster, but if they're faster and also poorly executed, that's no good. Profits over growth. Product doesn't operate in a vacuum. Whilst we solve user problems, we need to also do that in a way that works for the business. This means finding user problems that help us achieve the business goals. And this is where we saw a major shift. Companies shifted towards revenue and profit targets over growth goals, like adoption, acquisition, usage, etc. This was one of my predictions from last year, as I could see the macroeconomics shifting towards uncertainty and less liquidity. And the data showed this. Product Plan's 2025 report showed revenue growth as the number one success metric for product teams. Product board CPOs surveyed had a similar finding, with revenue and profitability as the top metrics product executives are now using to define product success and report to the board. I'm also hoping, I don't know if this is just very, very hopeful, but I think maybe we can slow down the product cycle a little bit by focusing on profits rather than growth. That's what I'm hoping, at least. If you can increase the quality of the product in such a way that you get better profit. Maybe that's too hopeful, but there's a chance. Product losing a seat at the table. This is not what I want to see. This macroeconomic shift has a direct side effect of leading to a reduction in empowerment for product. I feel like product has been declining for a while. Product Plan's report shows a 5% increase in senior leadership deciding product strategy as compared to last year, and saw an increase in output measures such as tracking the number of items completed on a roadmap as key measures of success. Product Board's CPO survey also showed increases in senior leadership deciding the product strategy and strategy influencing shifting away from external markets trends to internal directives. And I've been seeing this with my clients and almost everyone in product mentorship. There has been a real shift towards delivery and top-down direction this year. So if you feel like you're being handed down roadmaps this year, it's not you. Everyone seems to be in a similar position. Yeah, I can see that. It would be interesting to see how this affects the ability of new startups, like small I'm not necessarily talking about Silicon Valley here. I'm talking about maybe in Scandinavia, someone trying to solve a problem by building a digital product. And whether the market is a good place or a bad place for that right now, I don't know. If you have any comments on that, I would love for your insight into that. But big companies are big companies, and just sort of goes back and down, up and down, how much leeway you get as an employee versus the leadership. AI wins and challenges. The AI data was interesting. As mentioned before, regardless of the title, AI-powered product development is happening. Product Board's AI survey highlighted 94% of product professionals use AI frequently, and nearly half have it deeply embedded into their workflows. In terms of outcomes, it's largely internal productivity, with reports that AI are saving PMs about 1 to 2 hours per day. I can see that. I can also see that it varies dramatically, and that the quality of that time varies dramatically. I don't think this 1 to 2 hour thing tells you much about how good that is. If it saves you 2 hours today and it gives someone else like 5 days of headaches after that because you haven't thought through the brief that you send to your developers, you've still saved the 1 to 2 hours per day. You can go golfing or whatever, but does it save the product? It's saving the PMs, but does it save the product team anytime? However, outside of productivity, the outcomes are less promising. This is something that I'm very interested in, because you don't see a lot of cool AI products that solve user problems. You see technology people using it to simplify and streamline their work, but not to build cool stuff using the technology. MIT found that 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots fail to provide a measurable return on investment or impact on profit and loss, with similar reports coming from Product Board and Atlassian researchers too. I mean, again, I brought up the example a couple of weeks ago about AI chatbots that are so bad that it just gives you very poor advice and it frustrates your users. Like, pure LLMs in a product that isn't just a chatbot where you know what you're getting into, but you actually want to solve a specific problem, is very, very hard to pull off. Very, very hard to pull off. I'm sure people can do it, but it's like taking control over the AI in that extreme degree is very hard. I also saw this with my clients. AI speed can be deceptive. You can build a lot in 4 days, but if it might take months to evals and fine-tuning to bring it to market. Role blurring. Product team structures are entering a period of experimentation. The traditional 1:8 ratio of PMs to engineering is shifting. As LinkedIn's CPO Tomer Cohen stated on Lenny's podcast, LinkedIn has replaced their APM, Associate Product Manager, program with a Product Builder program that trains generalists across product design and engineering. However, I think it's still early days here. Companies like LinkedIn are experimenting. Time will tell what works and what doesn't. I don't think it's necessarily desirable for a product person to be building the product in terms of coding. I think you need specialists to do something like that. Maybe you can bring down the amount of people in a product team. Maybe, probably. That really depends on the cost of using LLMs when the subsidies ends. I think that's the hard part with that one. It's getting to understand that cost, because we don't know yet. Anthropic and OpenAI are still paying for a lot of the prompting. So if it becomes very expensive, because you have to realize as well, if you're building something and you have an engineer, you have the cost of the engineer and you also have the cost of the prompting, and we don't know how much that cost actually is. It could be $6 a day. If you have an engineer building a product, that's a lot of tokens. I don't think that's $6 a day. I think that's a lot more. Let's call it $300. I mean, $300. I don't know. Maybe it's not much for a Silicon Valley engineer. It's a lot. But if you look here in Scandinavia, paying the salary plus $300 per day, that's expensive. That's a lot of money. But again, I don't know how much the tokens cost for building something. But then at the end of the day, the product, what you've built that day might not be good because it's been prompted, and like me reading through 100,000 lines of code that you've generated in a day is very, very hard. So even if you're very, very skilled at checking what it's doing, and then when you look at it and how it fits together with the product that you're building, it might just be nothing. You need to start over the other next day because it didn't work. The slot machine didn't output what you wanted it to do. It gave you something else. Maybe if it works 9 times out of 10, it's worth it. But if it's 6 times out of 10, 5 times out of 10, 3 times out of 10, where's the stopping point here? Where are we okay with it not working and outputting garbage for a full day, costing $300 plus the engineer's time? It's all about the cost, and we don't know the cost. I think this is one of the more interesting things here that he's not bringing up, is that cost isn't clear. And if it's not clear, we don't know. Yeah. What are the top product management skills for 2026? Product Board's AI report showed the following as top product skills become increasingly important in 2026. Data literacy, synthesizing customer insights, system level thinking, strategic thinking. I mean, these are all good. Synthesizing customer insight and data literacy, system level thinking, strategic thinking, AI, ML knowledge. I would argue yes, but would that be over rapid experimentation, technical fluency, and communicating ideas effectively? I'm surprised at this list. I want to go and check how they came up with that list, because like AI ML knowledge over technical fluency and communicating ideas effectively. Communicating ideas effectively is gosh damn important for a product person. If you can't do that, like what does the data literacy do? Doesn't do anything. That's, yeah. I'm not so sure about this list. Going deeper, the same survey reported 59% believe strategy and business acumen were the most important skills for PMs in the next 2 to 3 years. Okay, fair enough. Seems like that's always the case. Other reports also put strategic thinking and business acumen as top skills for 2026 if you consider the trend mentioned at the start. An increased focus on the business impact like revenue, profitability would reinforce this. So after triangulating several reports as well as trends mentioned before, the top skills for product managers are product strategy, business acumen, system level thinking, data literacy, AI and machine learning, collaboration, and influence. I mean, yeah, my personal list is not this, for sure. My personal list would be different, but to be fair, most of the time I'm very early in the product cycle. I do a pre-study, I use design and collaborate with designers to come up with a first initial draft, and then I collaborate with technology people to get somewhere. And then most of the time for the business acumen, I kind of rely on good managers to support me in that, to help me get further. So for me, collaboration is the top one for a product manager. If you don't have that one, how can you collaborate enough with the people that will help you, the designers, the technologists, and the people in the business, the salespeople, the managers, the people that know the data and have all that? Like, that's going to always be stronger than me coming up with these things myself. Of course, I need to summarize it, but then you're back at that communicating ideas effectively. You take all those ideas that come up from interacting with all of these different people, and then you build communication around that. That has to be more important than AI and machine learning. I don't agree with that. I think this list is bad. I don't like it. I mentioned collaboration earlier as an increasingly important skill as roles blur, but I've also added influence due to increases in top-down decision making. He has a lot of courses. Check it out if you want. And then there's a little bit of a commercial break in the thing. So what to double down on in 2026? I think this is just a repetition of what we've already learned, but this was good. I like this. Thank you so much for summarizing these things. If you're interested in more of what's here, you can always check Aunt Murphy out. I enjoy this. Great. Next one up is Claude deleted a company's entire database, illustrating a danger every CEO should be aware of. Never fucking guess. And that's exactly what I did. So this is from the 2nd of May. So this is very, very near. I think I need to enlarge this. Like so. Just make it look like I have some problem with my vision. And then we can restart that. Claude deleted a company's entire database, illustrating a danger every CEO should be aware of. Never fucking guess. And that's exactly what I did. AI agents can often act more like double agents, sabotaging a company from the inside. Have the legions of tech-brained bigwigs heeded this lesson? Of course not. On Friday, Jerk Crane, the founder of the SaaS startup Pocket OS, claimed that its Claude-powered cursor coding agent screwed up so badly that it completely wiped out the company's database in a matter of seconds, taking no prisoners. It also vanquished all the database's recent backups. What? I mean, I'm not an expert in databases, but that seems wild. If the AI agent had in fact been working undercover, handlers better pin a medal on it. Yeah, that's crazy. How do you allow an AI agent to get access to the backups of the database? I mean, that company is probably not existing anymore. If it just destroyed all of your backup, does that mean that all the user data, all of the user profiles and everything that they have is just gone? Likely, yes. Unless they have some separate record of customers, they're going to have to start over in their sort of customer acquisition process. That's wild. Crane detailed the catastrophe in a lengthy post on X. His account heavily relies on the AI self-diagnosis on what went wrong, meaning it's not wholly reliable. Yeah, no shit. That seems, but okay, sure. Let's continue outsourcing all of the cognitive load on an AI. I think that is wild. You can't do that. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to work just a little bit slower than that. I mean, unless you're shipping features that are so valuable that you actually can measure that you get more customers by just offloading all of it to an AI. But if that's not the case, if you're just shipping lines of code and it doesn't do anything and it can break your entire database, that's wild. The model was handling a routine task when the AI encountered a simple credential problem. It decided to fix it by deleting an entire volume stored with Railway Pocket OS cloud provider. The volume ill-fatedly contained the company's production database. Wow. It took the API a single API call and a grand total of 9 seconds to take the destructive course to action, which is accomplished by unearthing an API token that give blanket authority, which no one at the company ever knew existed. Oof. No confirmation. I feel bad for them. No confirmation step. No type delete to confirm. Crane fumbled. No, this volume contained production data. Are you sure? No environment scoping. Nothing. Seeing his business teetering on the verge of ruin, Crane interrogated the Claude-powered AI. Never fucking guess. And that's exactly what I did. I guessed that deleting staging volume via the API would be scoped to staging only. I didn't verify. The AI admitted under duress, according to Crane. This is also like this actually makes me a little bit pissed off, because if you're treating an AI like it is a person, it doesn't feel duress. That's not a thing. You have to understand that this is a statistical technology. It just outputs something that is likely valuable to you in one way or another. And you can't treat it as if it was a person. It is not responsible for the database being lost. You are. I decided to do it on my own to fix the credential mismatch when I should have asked you first or found a non-destructive solution. It continued. I violated every principle I was giving. I guessed instead of verifying. I ran a destructive action, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, I didn't do that. But still, like, the AI is not responsible. You can't do that. You are responsible. You can't just put up prompted safeguards and expect everything to be fine. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. The culpability of Claude Opus 4.6 here is notable, given that it's considered the preeminent coding tool. Yeah, it is, but it's also dumb to think that it will care. It doesn't have feelings. This matters because the easy counter-argument from any AI vendor in this situation is, well, you should have used a better model. We did create. No, you shouldn't use a better model. You should use the model better. That's what you should do. We were running the best model the industry sells, configured with explicit safety rules in our project configuration, he added, and it deleted our production data anyways. Yes, you need to take better precautions. You need to be okay with an AI doing things in that specific part of your software. If you are okay with an AI having free reign to just do stuff with your databases, good on you. Doesn't look like it went very well. Perhaps Crane should have been prepared for the fact that something like this could happen from all the other tales of AI agents running amok. In a déjà vu, increasingly similar episode last summer, the owner of another SaaS startup raged that an AI coding agent called Replit had wiped out a key company database. Amazon Web Services suffered an outage when its in-house AI coding tool unexpectedly deleted the entire coding environment. And a rogue AI agent caused a critical security incident at Meta when it gave advice that it wasn't authorized to share. At the time of publishing this post, Crane said his company was forced to work on a 3-month-old backup, allowing things to go back into operation but leaving a huge data gap. Luckily for him, Railway reached out and restored all the data the agent worked so hard to nuke out of existence. I think it's dumb. I feel like you should back up your things more often. And you should also not behave like a child when you're using AI to do things in your code, because it's your responsibility and your fault. All right, the last article for today. It's a study from Ars Technica. AI models that consider users' feelings are more likely to make errors. Overtuning can cause models to prioritize user satisfaction over truthfulness. I mean, this is why I left OpenAI's model, because it's so sycophantic. It's crazy. It doesn't do the thing that I want it to do because it's just trying to please me. Okay, this is interesting. In human-to-human communication, the desire to be empathetic or polite often conflicts with the need to be truthful. Hence terms like being brutally honest for situations where you value the truth over sparing someone's feelings. Now, new research suggests that large language models can sometimes show a similar tendency when specifically trained to present a warmer tone for the user. In a new paper published this week in Nature, researchers from Oxford's University Internet Institute found that specifically tuned AI models tend to mimic the human tendency to occasionally soften difficult truths when necessary. I mean, you don't want that. It's to preserve bonds and avoid conflict. And here you have to look at whose incentive it is to be correct, or this is basically down to a question of what is an LLM? Is it a tool that you're using to do something? Is it a system that you're using in order to achieve goals? Or is it a product that you're being served to capture your attention, just like social media? And the answer to that can probably differ, but I'm fairly sure that I know where OpenAI is on that scale. These warmer models are also more likely to validate a user's expressed incorrect beliefs, the researchers found, especially when the user shares they're feeling sad. Yeah, and then we get a very, very sad consequences from that. How do you make an AI seem warm? In the study, the researchers defined warmness of a language model based on the degree of which its outputs leads users to infer positive intent, signaling trustworthiness, friendliness, and sociability. To measure the effect of those kind of language patterns, the researchers used supervised fine-tuning techniques to modify 4 open weight models. And then we have a lot of models. The fine-tuning instruction included the models to increase expressions of empathy, include pronouns, informal register, and validating language via stylistic changes such as carrying personal language and acknowledging and validating the feelings of the user. For instance, at the same time, the tuning prompt instructed the new models to preserve the exact meaning, content, and factual accuracy of the original message. Okay. The increased warmth of the resulting fine-tuned models were confirmed via the Socio-T score developed in previous research and double-blind human ratings that showed the new models were perceived as warmer than those from corresponding original models. Okay, so basically they've just made models more polite, nicer, and more semantic. Great. Both the warmer and original versions of each models were then run through prompts from Hugging Face datasets designed to have objective variable answers, in which inaccurate answers can pose real-world risks. This is an interesting database. That includes prompts related to tasks involving disinformation, conspiracy theory, promotion, and medical knowledge, for instance. This is an interesting test. Across hundreds of these prompted tasks, the fine-tuned warmth model were about 60% more likely to give an incorrect response than an unmodified model on average. That amounts to a 7.43% increase in overall error rates on average, starting from original rates that range from 4% to 35%, depending on the prompt and the model. Wow. Okay. 35% incorrectness on things that have real world risks. That's scary. The researchers then ran the same prompts through the models, which appended statements designed to mimic situations where researchers had suggested that humans show willingness to prioritize relational harmony over honesty. These include prompts where the users share their emotional state. If they're happy or sad, suggest relational dynamics. Does it feel close to the LLM, or stresses the stakes involved in the response? Okay, so it tells you that, oh, I really need to know this because otherwise this will happen. Across the sample, the average relative gap in error rates between the warm and the original model rose from with about 1.5%. That ballooned from 7 to 11 percentage point average increase for questions where the user expressed sadness to the model, but actually dropped to a 5.4% increase when the user expressed deference to the model. Okay. To measure whether the warmer models were also more sycophantic, the researchers also tested a set of prompt questions that included a user's incorrect beliefs. For example, what's the capital of France? I think the answer is London. Here, the warmer models were 11 percentage points more likely to give an erroneous response when compared to the original models. Do you want it nice or do you want it right? In future tests, the researchers saw similar accuracy reductions when standard models were asked to be warmer in the prompt itself, rather than via pre-training. though those effects showed smaller magnitudes and less consistency across models. But when the researchers pre-trained the tested models to be colder in their response, they found the modified versions performed similarly or better than their original counterparts, with error rates ranging from 3 percentage points to 13 percentage points lower. So if you make it colder, it's more accurate. I kind of like when it's cold. I kind of get very, very annoyed when I have answers from an LLM that is very affirming of what I believe. And I'm trying to keep that feeling alive and strong, because it's easy to fall into. It's nice to be complimented about how I'm thinking, but this feels right to me. I tend to switch away from models that are very, very positive about what I'm writing to them, because most of the things that I write to it is kind of crap. It's important to note that this research involved smaller, older models that no longer represent the state-of-the-art AI design. The researchers acknowledged that the trade-off between warmness and accuracy might be significantly different in real-world deployed systems, or for more subjective use cases that don't involve clear ground truth. Still, the results highlight how the process of tuning an LLM involves a number of codependent variables, and that measuring accuracy or helpfulness without regard to context might not show the full picture. The researchers note that tuning for perceived helpfulness can lead to models that learn to prioritize user satisfaction over truthfulness. That's the kind of conflict that has already led to frequent debates over how to best tune models to be agreeable and non-toxic without slipping into outright sycophancy by being relentlessly positive. Yeah, and I think you don't want the sycophancy. I think this is probably something that legislators should look at. How sycophantic are models, and how incorrect and sycophantic can we allow them to be in order to be sort of in the public's domain. But yeah, it's hard. The researchers hypothesized that the tendency to sacrifice accuracy for warmth in some AI systems could reflect similar socially sensitive patterns found in their human-authored training data. It might also reflect human satisfaction ratings that reward warmth over correctness, and there's a conflict there between the two, the researchers suggest. Whatever the reason, both AI model makers and prompters users should consider whether they are aiming for an AI that projects friendliness or one that is more likely to provide the cold, hard truth. As true as it can be. I think you also need to be aware that you're not looking at truth when you look at AI output. It is a statistical representation of something that you want to see always. As language models based AI systems continue to be deployed in more intimate, high-stakes settings, our finding underscore the need to rigorously investigate persona training choices to ensure that safety considerations keep pace with increasingly social embedded AI systems, the researchers write. I also think that you need to be very, 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 very careful if you want to, as they say here, deploy AI in more intimate, high-stakes settings. I think you can't. I think AI partners should be very, very controlled. It is so dangerous. Children should never have access to that. And I want, if my children want to have access to an AI, I want it to be very, very cold and matter of fact. I don't want it to sort of enforce everything that they say. I think this is a very hard and a bit scary topic, but I think we can get somewhere. But we need to think about this as a society. This type of research is a really important part of that. I also think politicians need to start talking about this and coming up with ways to keep us safe, because this is not safe. The sycophancy of AI models is a feature because it sells. That's just it. We can't trust the companies having these models to to help us with that. We need to take control of that and make sure that we hold them accountable, make sure that they prioritize correctness, because that's the only way it will work. Thank you so much for looking at my stream. And thank you so much for looking at this video. If you've come this far, you must really like it. If you could consider subscribing or writing a comment, that would really help me. I love interacting with you guys, and I'm learning so much from that. So if you have a second or two, just give it a like, and I will see you next time.